Fifth Amendment rights. To follow that logic, then maybe those same detainees have Second Amendment rights as well. The Birdwell family and so many families affected by terrorism and war before and after September 11th would agree that there is nothing more contemptible than judges sworn to enforce the law and protect the rights of citizens, granting by fiat the rights of citizenship to an enemy whose passion it is to kill us, and an enemy that are not only non-citizens, but not even protected by the Geneva Conventions. We are looking for a president who will appoint constructionalist judges to the bench to change the judiciary from within. But remember this. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that only the judiciary can correct the judiciary.
Right.
The citizens of this nation have 100% of the combat power it takes to change that branch of government. Presidential appointments represent about 30%. The remaining 70% resides with you and your representatives in the legislative body whom we send to Washington that can change the judiciary from outside that branch. Too many of our elected representatives view the judiciary as having the ultimate veto. What that really means in practicality is that any act of the Congress signed by the President is not law, but is in fact only simply a formal request for permission from the courts. Fortunately, the foundation of our form of government, the Declaration of Independence, says the consent of the governed. It does not say the permission of the judiciary. Supreme is the adjective of court, not the adjective of the branch of government. The challenge of the judiciary is not the only reason the war on terror is so personal to the Birdwell family and so difficult for this nation. For so many of our families, it is personal because they've either been directly or indirectly affected by an act of terrorism. The Birdwells are just one of those families, and I wish to share a portion of that story from September 11th with you this morning. Our story does not start out with an act of heroism or valor on my part. I was simply coming out of the men's restroom, returning to the office where I'd been watching the events unfold at the World Trade Center. I'd had my morning Coke around 7 o'clock, and at 9:35, I stepped out to go to the men's restroom, telling my two co-workers, Sandy and Cheryl, that I would be back momentarily, and those would be the last words that I would speak to my two co-workers. I was about 7 to 8 steps out of the restroom, returning to my office, and in front of the elevators in the newly renovated wedge on the second floor when American Airlines Flight 77 was deliberately crashed into the Pentagon between the 4th and 5th corridors at 1st and 2nd floor level. As you look at this picture, this first slide, I want you to clearly understand what a miracle it is for me to be with you today. This picture was taken by Officer Mike Garcia of the Pentagon Police Department just a few minutes after the crash. The large X indicates the impact point of the nose of the fuselage at 1st and 2nd floor level. You can see the oval-shaped arc above the fuselage at the point of penetration just above the X. The portion of the building to the right of the vertical line would collapse about 30 minutes later. The dashed circle is where the left engine on the wing came through the building, and the solid line circle is my office window, and the window just to the right of that window that is circled is my boss's office, where Cheryl and Sandy and I were watching the events unfold and where their remains will be recovered. The second slide is a composite slide of the Pentagon with an artist rendering of the 757 superimposed just before the crash. The slide was used by Deputy Attorney General McNulty in the prosecution of Mr. Moussaoui this past year. My office window is still circled on the left, and the window circled to the right of the fuselage is where I was just a few yards behind that window, inside the corridor, returning to my office through the crash site. I did not survive being 15 to 20 yards from the impact point of an 80-ton 757 traveling at 530 miles per hour with 3,000 gallons of jet fuel because the Army made me the toughest soldier in the Pentagon, or because Fort Worth is my hometown. But because the toughest man to ever walk this earth, who now sits at the right hand of the Father, had something very different in mind.